All right, so we are now recording and we're ready to get started. Thank you all again for being here. And thank you to Cody and Wes for joining us. And I am really, really sorry I forgot to invite you to the last meeting.
It's okay. You recorded it, so I watched it. Perfect.
All right, so I think today what I'd like to do, and I think the best way we can use our time is to go over the roles and responsibilities document that Griffin has started writing up for us, and Steve has done some edits on. And start going over that and maybe just line by line it. Once we have that in a finished fashion, my thought was that I would take the weekend to put that into something of a more narrative or finalized version that we could all look over and approve at our next and possibly last meeting. If that sounds good to everybody, we will get going. All right. There are a lot of anonymous animals on this one. Hippo, camel, dragon. All right, so let's.
That's all of us.
I think so. I will share my screen so we're all looking at the same thing. Oh, I can figure out which role description it is. It's this one. Nope, it's not that one. Luckily, inability to figure out which window you want to share does not disqualify one from running a work group on IT. There we go. All right. So this is the most recent version, I think. Does that look right to everybody? All right. So we'll start with the first one. I guess my question with this is, do we necessarily want it to be an on-site position?
I mean, if you're asking for IT on there, I would say yes. Because a lot of the things that you had listed before, like for the kind of technology stuff that they're going to be working with and sort of experiences, those are going to be a lot easier to do on site. So is this, I'm going to ask a couple questions. I did not watch the video previously to this, but these are for going to be attorneys that are working on site and not remote as well. Is that correct?
We don't know.
I wouldn't assume anything about the attorneys who would be utilizing these services. It could be people in a firm. It could be people at OPDC. It could be people doing hourly work. It could be solo practitioners. Any type of case that we fund.
Gotcha. Okay, so that's kind of up in the air, but there would be like a centralized office for them, right?
Again,
probably
depends on your definition of the word office.
Okay.
There are attorneys who have been known to work out of their homes.
Sure.
Jordan, can you speak a little bit in more detail, if you know, about like how is this going to work? Like, it just seems like we don't really know who is going to be hired, who they're going to work for, how it's going to like, for example, is the legislature going to say, hey, here's money, go and hire an IT guy that can drive around to all the various PD offices or work out of his or her own office and remotely support people? Or is somebody like Steve going to have to put in a request for OPDS for money on a particular case to get an IT guy or girl on to that one particular case? Like, do you have any details in terms of how it's going to work?
No. I have suspicions, but I don't have details. So the way I suspect this is going to work is it's going to work a lot like the way we fund attorneys on contracts, which is they would apply to us and say, I want to be able to do this. In this case, it would be an attorney applying to us and say, I want to be able to hire an IT person.
See, but that's a case by case basis, right? And so,
well, yes, but what we're doing right now is creating the minimum standards that that person would have to meet in order for us to fund them. Does that make sense?
So I think ultimately, from my understanding, the way it would work is we would determine the minimum amount of attorneys that would be working in an office that would require a full-time, probably in-person or hybrid IT person, and then anything else that is a solo practitioner. I think you would default to the same rules that, like how do we supply a support person for a solo practitioner, right? So if there's one attorney, do they automatically get one paralegal? I don't really know how that works, honestly, from my end, but I think it would probably fall into a similar realm.
So things like staffing ratios and funding are a later discussion that aren't a part of this particular work group, but we don't necessarily know how the funding would work out right at the moment. It could very well be that people performing a tech support role could be funded in many of the same ways that attorneys currently are, not through CSS, not through PAE, but it could be like, all right, we have people who are just direct billing for the services that they're providing to public defense attorneys, whatever frame they're doing that in. We don't know at the moment because we haven't asked the legislature for the funding yet. In order to do that, we need these standards to say who are the people we want to be able to hire, how do we know that they can do the job we're hiring them for, and what are we expecting as a result of them being hired? Like, what are the performance goals standards that we want to have to make sure that, everybody's on the same page about what the job is for the people who are hired. We don't know what what the answers are going to be with regards to funding or staffing levels at this point, because that's further down the line as a part of this project. That doesn't answer your question, and I know it doesn't.
No, but it gets us in the right direction. I appreciate that. Thank you. It definitely, look, I mean, you only know what we know. So I understand that. Perhaps then not asking for an on-site or virtual requirement perhaps would leave the door open for any of those possible scenarios.
Right. Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. I think requiring it to be on-site position at this point in time just seems unnecessarily limiting. Just there is so much that can be done remotely. I know on-site can be helpful in a lot of capacities, but at this stage, I don't think it makes sense to require that, especially if we don't really have any idea what this is going to look like in the future, or where this is even headed, possibly.
And I would make.
I guess my comment about that is I would maybe take out the online position, but take out the on-site, and then at the end put a parentheses, on-site or virtual, so that I'm sure this is going to be edited some more after we do it, but frankly, some of these things that I think we're going to be saying should be done is certainly going to be better on site, especially in an office. And I thought this was going to be for basically the quote unquote public defender offices, but it may be included for everybody, I guess. So again, I would maybe take out the first word on-site and then leave position requiring and then put parentheses at the end, on-site or virtual, something like that.
Yeah.
How's that language, Steve? Position may be on-site or virtual, providing that a virtual staff member can meet all performance goals or whatever we end up calling their metrics.
Yeah. I think that's
I think
fine.
that seems fair.
Okay.
Also,
Can
keep in
I-
mind, we want to know what the roles are, but not necessarily what a job description is. Slightly
Mhm.
slightly different things. I think you could have somebody hire when they're looking for this, hire somebody to be on site or engage with somebody on a less than full-time basis where they may not be on site very much, but they come in when they need to, right?
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So everybody comfortable moving to the next stop?
I was just going to make a comment on that. So from an IT perspective, we have me, who I work probably 90% of the time on site, and then Cody's about half and half. There's a lot of stuff that you can do virtually, but there is times where they would need to be able to go on site or meet in the same location to fix issues. Troubleshooting over telephone when you're talking to user, in this case, we're talking about attorneys who probably don't have a super lot of tech knowledge, can be extremely difficult in describing where to click or, a two-way conversation on what icons look like and, like what's a caret and things like that. So, like all down to all the nitty gritty that you'd have to do on it. So just keep that in mind for the future as we're kind of building out like this role and like what this looks like. So.
Thanks, Wes. All right. So the position does not require advanced technology knowledge such as network admin, coding, or an encyclopedic knowledge of all programs or operating systems. What do we think of this one? Hello, Lilo.
Can I ask another very broad question that you might or might
Sure.
not have an answer to?
If you'll forgive me talking to Griffin's dog.
Oh, yeah. So in a lot of law firms, you separate out different roles more specifically and concretely. For example, what I'm seeing as described as this role seems to me more of like a support desk role, meaning people call in with questions, my computer doesn't work, blah, 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 getting this error message, how do I do X, Y, and Z? That, open up a ticket, solve the ticket, close the ticket, done.
Mm-hmm.
This, to me, when we had our meeting last time, I was envisioning more of a litigation-specific technology role, which this document doesn't seem to reflect that in my mind. And I'm just wanting to sort of hash that out if I'm not the only one thinking that.
Was this intended, because I remember last group, we had come up with the 5 different role classifications. Was this intended to cover all 5 of them or just one of them?
That's a good
don't
question.
I'll add on to that. The majority of what's being described in this document, this role, would not be covered under any sort of like OPDC would not today, as things stand, cover any of this work, right? I understand that a new kind of funding stream is being contemplated, but this is all considered to be overhead. They won't cover any of this. And so I'm wondering if that's going to be the response from the commission or the legislature, like what you're describing here is covered under overhead, thereby it needs to be covered by the attorney or the attorney, firm's budget. And that's another reason to further differentiate what we're talking about here, which is considered possibly to be overhead, just a support role, versus what is a litigation expert role, which is what I, again, thought was more akin to what they're asking for.
Well, I
So,
thought,
What?
oh, go on.
well, I thought it was more than that. I thought it was for in-office and potential litigation. So my thinking was that it was for overall tech support for both. Because later on it talks about, you know, doing presentations and how to do presentations, but it also, at least Griffin's first thing talked about, you know, well, I'll use my example. How do I connect to Google Docs? You know, do I have to call somebody and wait for their response as to how I call, you know, or do I go down the hall, or do I, you know, do a text to them? How do I do that kind of stuff? So
Yeah,
I
but you
think
wouldn't
in
go-
office and for presentations.
So the purpose of the project, from the perspective of the Moss Adams study that we're kind of basing this on, is what are attorneys spending their time on that is not casework that we could move away from, and that if we funded people to do the not casework stuff, it would free up attorneys' time to be able to do more of the casework stuff. So from that perspective, I think it is all of the above. It's litigation support, it's the more, you know, ticket-based IT support, that we need to work into it. Kevin and Cody.
Also acknowledging that we could be wrong about the breadth of what the legislature would be willing to fund. It may be possible that we define several roles. So to take this from one of the other work groups that I'm on, I am working on a paralegal, legal assistant, and other office support staff work group. It may be that the legislature is willing to fund paralegals and legal assistants, but not other office support staff, right? That's too general a role. It needs to be considered part of overhead. It may be that there are aspects of roles that we define here. What we are trying to do is be clear about what we're asking for. We may not be able to control what it is the legislature then does with that information, but the best we can do is say, here are why each of these roles are integral to the public defense system, and these are the kinds of things that are causing attorneys not to be able to do the attorney work that we want them to be doing. So please give us the authority to fund these directly so that attorneys can do what we need them to do, because that is part of meeting the need across the state. We have attorneys who would be able to put more effort into meeting the needs across the state, would be able to devote more time to that, but for the fact that they are pulled away from the attorney work because they have other things that they're having to do, like solve technical issues.
All right. And so I also added the 5 roles that we talked about last time up top, so everybody has those kind of fresh in their mind.
I started going on a really nice rant, and then I muted myself. So if you don't mind,
go for it, Cody.
I was gonna say I was just gonna piggyback off of what Kevin was saying. I do like web and SharePoint basically for OPDC, but I work out of the North Trial office, and I started there as it was opening, so I kind of know what is required from an IT person and how that changes how easily work can be done. I think it's something that people don't realize until they have somebody around that can solve all these issues as they arise. And I do help figure out how people can view Discovery, download Discovery, things like that, as well as just normal IT stuff. So I think it can be all encompassing. And as long as we acknowledge that, maybe that would be something that could possibly be funded. That's the end of that.
Thanks, Cody. Okay, so I guess given that discussion, are we still comfortable with those 5 categories as a breakdown? Anybody uncomfortable with that? All right. One thing we can do, well, I think we've got 2 things that we can do from here. We can either keep going through this kind of line by line and then sort it into, which ones apply to which of those categories. Then if there's anything additional to add to those categories, we can do it that way. Or we can just start breaking down into categories using the bullet points that we have as examples of where some things we might want to include in them. Does anybody have a huge preference as to which one of those we do? Yeah. I think if we're ultimately going to end up in categories, we might as well start there. So we got IT system software. What would someone in an IT system software role do?
It feels a little broad to me, but I mean, obviously, you would help install software on everyone's computers, make sure everyone's running the same type of operating system. I think if you get too deep, you're asking for somebody of another level than, on this lower level of IT support. So surface level software, more than anything, make sure everything's running, things are up to date.
Is there for these offices, is there going to be a standardization of equipment that's being used?
No.
No.
Okay.
Or rather,
I dropped
not
some things in on
necessarily.
the dock.
I'm sorry,
I was
what?
gonna say, like, not only help install software, but assess the software needs, what programs are needed and would work best for the work that needs to be done.
I'm gonna also include hardware in that.
I think that section that talks about being proficient in using technology to assist attorneys, that talks about discovery and the different types of software and video codecs, because that's a huge time consumer for attorneys trying to figure out how to play and view discovery. And so it's actually like a huge part of my role in the office.
Yeah, and everybody has their own player, makes it really difficult.
So Griffin, would something like
yes.
that fit more in issue resolution, user support and training?
I think the
because there's a Go ahead.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, I think the software aspect is important of it, but yes, all these things like combine together, and like my role isn't just in the office too. Like today I went to a bar to go get, video surveillance from their system, and I had to, like you have to figure it out on your own. And so it's a role that encompasses anything technology related,
I would add to regularly update and software, right? And then yeah.
Okay. Anything else we want to include in that category?
Are we going, are we going to include discovery, like discovery management in terms of where discovery is hosted, where it's placed, where it's archived in that category?
Maybe in data.
Yeah, data security probably would.
Yeah. And I also don't mind hopping around between these so we get ideas. So Russ, what was that? Where is it hosted? How was
How is it maintained?
Yeah, I would say everything dealing with where discovery is saved to archiving discovery. And I mean, although I don't know. Yeah, I mean, a lot of these categories are sort of go over each other and merge together. But in terms of accessibility, might be under IT system and software. Like I know a lot of attorneys who sometimes are in the office, oftentimes are not, and need to access that discovery virtually or in court or while out on the road investigating something,
Mhm.
I think in terms of data security, like ensuring some sort of compliance with what the bar says, attorneys ethically need to be held to some sort of IT standards and security standards.
Oh, gotcha. So ensuring
Yeah.
that client data is secure.
Discovery, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And when you talk about discovery, I would use data instead of discovery and maybe a parentheses discovery. So you know what you're talking about, because if you just use discovery, I mean, there's all sorts of data that it could be. And while you all may be just particularly interested in discovery, the attorney's going to be interested in more than just the discovery.
Good point, Steve.
I would throw remote access management under data security too, probably. It just seems like a little bit better fit for that, because that's when, if you have remote access, then that's when the security features and kind of gateways are going to be most important to make sure that nobody else from outside can go into your system and steal data.
So currently at public defender offices, what is set up in place? Like how is this determined? Who decides this and who sets this up?
Depends on the office.
Yeah.
But it does
One of
happen,
the-
like there's something going on and people are making those decisions. I mean, I guess it has to be.
Well,
I assume so. Griffin is
Yeah,
PDXLC's person.
But so we contract out with a tech, with techs, and we have a database, and then we have our servers, and all of it is managed by them, and then I work directly with them on everything on site.
Okay, that makes sense.
Griffin, do you know if it's that way in any of the other big PD offices?
I actually have no idea. I know that they don't have like the Multnomah County, whichever their biggest office. I know that they have like discovery people, but like attorneys will do, basic tech support and stuff like that. So
I know that Marion County Defenders downstairs outsources some of their IT stuff. So
UVPD, it was 100% outsourced.
Okay.
And then you get smaller offices who it's the Wild West. I mean, they might have a person on site, they might have a tech person, they might have nobody, and it's just a cobbled together, you know.
I know when I was running my office, my tech support was me and what favors I could call in from some of my old friends in IT. What do we want these people to do for user support and training?
Probably best practices for all the things listed above. You know, sending encrypted emails if necessary, things like that, where to store things.
Say like maybe drafting like some sort of a manual, just of best practices and things like that, and maybe hosting regular trainings.
Yeah, the self-help guides, and then I mean, there's going to be two different types of training. It's going to be proactive and reactive, right? So this is why you shouldn't have did this, or don't ever do this because X, and then so.
I wonder if you want to use the word best practices, though. I mean, it's whatever practice is out there that they have to be trained in and support and be able to support. I mean, like you're talking about discovery. Probably every police department, I'm going to use the word, every police department has their own way to, write out their reports. It's going to be Word, it's going to be Google Docs, it's going to be whatever it is, or WordPerfect or whatever existed. And so while the best practice may be one of the softwares, that doesn't mean that they're all going to be using different software, because they all do use different software. Otherwise, you wouldn't need somebody to know how to get the discovery, because you'd all be able to get it the same way.
Right. So I think we can say best practices for things like IT safety and security, because those are fairly uniform. But we should.
I think that kind of goes under like software and systems that we're using, that this person would have an understanding on how to use all these different software and systems and different things that attorneys will need to use to view discovery or to do their job.
Redaction software. Okay. Anything else we want to say that people should be able to train in or support?
I would put this individual should become an expert in long-range communication systems such as Teams, WebEx, Zoom.
Knowledge of local. Someone outside of Steve's office has either a muscle car or a Harley.
Sorry.
Oh, you're good.
It's on State. I'll mute, but my office is on State Street, and I look out on it, a block away from the OPDC, whatever it is, office.
Yeah. We get all the same noise. I'm just jealous of the engines.
Yeah.
All right. Issue resolution. What are we talking about here? And please, nobody say resolve issues.
I would say be available during, business hours, in order to respond to any issues that come up.
I would say address any um, court or trial issues as they arise. Of a technical nature, not of a legal nature.
Do you really want to say available during office in normal business hours? Because I don't know any attorney, maybe there are some attorneys who only work during business hours. I mean, I send emails in the middle, not in the middle of the night, but before I go to bed. And God, if I didn't know how to, put something up on Google Docs, I might want to try to find somebody who would tell me.
I feel like it's a lot for the legislature to require people to work outside of business hours.
Yeah. That kind of takes us back to, I think what we're doing is setting a more minimum requirement for what OPDC might fund, and maybe availability during business hours or outside of business hours is something that we should best leave to the attorney or firm that's looking to hire them.
Mhm.
Anybody have great objections to pulling that line? Wes, Cody, speak up. Now's your chance to object to not having to work after 5.
Well, all right. Since you said it that way. No, I think, you bring up a good point. So I'm over in an appellate office right now. I know, I've kind of understood the attorney's work schedule after working with attorneys for the last 2 years, right? So you guys often will work at night from your couch, right? Reading through briefs or whatever and stuff like that. Friday is not a popular day for you guys to work, which I understand and I've accepted at this point. But the work gets done and you spend time on the weekends, right? So I think from an IT perspective, to have set hours that that you can contact IT is fair. And any sort of customer service outside of what we're talking about right now, they have business hours where you can call in and then you can resolve issues during that time. And that's essentially what this IT person is they have a customer base of attorneys that they're going to help. And they need to have time where they can go out and do stuff or spend time with their family and not have to worry about always having a computer with them or a phone because someone can't send an email. If it's not during the business hours, then they might have to wait till the next business day. And I think that's a fair practice that's kind of standardized through all customer service and tech support.
Do you think it needs to be something that we require in order to fund a position, that the attorney have a set hour that they're expected?
I mean, I don't know. I don't really know about, getting positions funded through legislator and stuff like that. But
not necessarily what we're looking at though. Like, how do we know what they're gonna do? Like what is the core idea of the role? And then how do we know somebody's capable? Like, how do we know that we should be hiring this person to do that?
I think that leads perfectly into that part that I had about It requires a personality that can patiently work with employees at various levels of technology familiarity. If the problem in question cannot be readily or rapidly solved, have the ability to document the issue and involve technical contractors.
That sounds like a performance standard for the role for me, right?
Right.
Like one of the things we would expect as part of the performance of this job, this role of issue resolution is that kind of personality, right? Somebody who's going to be able to move patiently, work with people of varying technical expertise, things along those lines. That's what we would expect somebody in that role to be able to, how they would perform.
So we could move the
Yeah,
availability
down below,
piece
yeah.
down below. So it's not necessarily part of the position, but it is part of how we judge if the position is being successful.
Also, there's a lot of like things that tie into everything from up top. Like the resolves incoming requests for assistance from users experiencing problems with hardware, software, network, or computer-related technologies.
Right. Okay. So we have address court or trial technical issues as they arise. I guess when I say court, what I really mean is court hearings. Let's go ahead and throw into responds to needs attorney slash office for technology support. That sound fair? It overlaps a bit with some of the other categories, but all right. Last and certainly not least, new technology integration. What do you guys think we do there? Cody and Wes, you guys just integrated a whole bunch of brand new technology for a brand new office.
Yeah.
I mean,
It has its hiccups, I feel like. I think having the IT person as the point person for communication with the whatever service you're trying to integrate to is really nice. Sometimes it's hard for people to articulate what the problem is or what problem they're trying to solve. So when they're looking at some type of new upgrade, it's nice to have that person have those meetings, get those answers, and then be able to implement them.
yeah, I mean, you guys kind of mentioned something before about escalating up issues and stuff like that, right? So, for my position, which is just kind of a general IT where I just kind of solve all the things, but also an important piece is how do I articulate what the root cause or what the user is trying to do to the next tier of support in a way that's translating from a user perspective to more technical perspective so that they understand what's trying to be done, right? So communication is going to be an important thing, whether it's written or verbal, being able to ask the right questions, things like that, so you can kind of troubleshoot and get to root cause on things. So
I think this also falls into this user support and training, creating
Right.
guides as you're going through, and you're probably getting to do some testing before you unleash it on people, things like that.
So I have a question. You guys who are setting up offices or have set up offices, how do you determine which software you're going to force somebody to use or which computer type you're going to force somebody to use? And let's say an example of whether you're going to have, an Apple computer or a whatever the other computers are called. Sorry, I'm getting old, can't remember names. Obviously, I assume you're allowing people who use the Apples to use their system and the others to use their system. Or maybe not. Maybe you're forcing everybody to use an Apple system.
Dell. Well, all of our equipment that we have when we're setting up the the state trial offices is all standardized. So they're using, you can go to our appellate office, to our business service office, or to a trial office, and they all literally have the same computers that I probably ordered for them and set up, right? So they're all standardized equipment that they have when it goes down to the monitors, the type of phones they're using, everything like that. And from an IT perspective, that makes it a lot easier because everybody's using the same equipment, right? So if you go into, if it wasn't like that, for example, and I went over to troubleshoot somebody's computer and I got one person with an Apple, I got one person with an old HP computer, and someone over here with like a Chromebook or something like that, and they're all kind of using or trying to figure the stuff out, it's going to be very complicated. And I think you would have a hard time finding one person that that would be able to resolve all of those things right there. So standardization of equipment as you set up these offices, I think is very important, so that they're all kind of using the same stuff.
And something that I found frustrating is that Apple allows you to save files with an asterisk in it, and Microsoft doesn't allow you to save files or open files with an asterisk in it. So it creates this problem where someone's saving a file on it. Anyway, it's just something we learned when we were trying to open files. People were sending us improper names.
Weird.
And that's
So
that's why it's important to have standardized equipment right there, so everything kind of works the same and you can have the same functionality. So
if I understand you guys right, the answer to Steve's question would be you work with whoever's running the office to tell them what the IT practices are, and you all make a decision about what systems you're going to use.
yeah, I mean, I think
Right.
I'm just throwing out an idea, but as these positions are being created, these offices are rolling out, I mean, there could be a recommended standard equipment that you'd use. It'd be the same equipment that we use at the state. And that way, if they're using state ran software or programs or whatever it is, then we know that they should function on those devices or machines that the attorneys are using, right? So
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 that may be a
keep in-
little bit out of this group's purview.
sure.
Well, but the flip side of that also is this is not just for the people that we would be in theory hiring to work for OPDC and building up those offices. This is for who might we have other people who are already doing work hire to support their own practice, which may have that now is something other than what we use for OPDC. That said, if there's a certain system that is already in use by a firm, the person may only need to be well versed in the programs, the software, whatever that firm uses. Maybe is able to help say, yes, let's move some of this because this might actually make your job easier. If we change to this product, my recommendation is changing to this product would save you significant time and headache on some of these tasks that you have, but would then need to, at least at the beginning, know how to work with the system that already exists. I don't think we're looking to force uniformity of equipment across the state.
No, and that would be like,
oh,
go ahead, Cody. Sorry.
I was just going to say, I think ignoring equipment needs, because I think everyone's going to bring what they have to the table and work with that. With software, I think maybe something to add would be something like finding software that's accepted maybe universally with equipment that can be used on Apple, Mac, Microsoft, whatever, iPads, Surfaces, all sorts of things, so that you don't have to worry about what equipment people are using. You can just worry about the software they're using.
So how does that sound for what we can put in a role description? Assess the needs of the office based on, I guess I should say internal and external factors, but such as integration with state software. We want someone who can advise on what's going to work. But we don't necessarily want to force someone down a particular road if they don't want to go. So like, we're not saying that everybody has to use a Mac or everybody has to use a PC, but we are saying that we want to be able to make sure that people are going to have the knowledge base to tell the attorneys that they're working for, this is what you need to integrate with this system. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that sounds good.
Steve?
Yeah, well, I think that's good. I'm going to use an example of something where you do want to force people to use a certain thing, or maybe there's a way to integrate both systems. When I was some of you may have heard this before, but when I was the head of MCAD, the Marion County Association of Defenders, we had a time billing system that we made ourselves using a Word, the Microsoft products, and everybody had to use it we gave that system the system to collect the data to what was eventually became OPDS, so that they could also integrate those systems. So for like a time billing system, you want to have both the user be able to use it and whoever's collecting the data be able to use it. And it may have to be one system. One of the problems with that is if you're buying that system from the outside, I think, and you tech people can tell me now, you're having to pay, monthly fees or yearly fees that may end up being extravagant for whatever software you use. But there are some systems that you're going to want to have to force people to use, I believe. I'm not sure how to say that in this, but
I think, Steve, I understand what you're talking about. And I suspect that's what they're talking about when they say the FCMS, the Financial Case Management System. And fingers crossed that there's news on that soon. So go ahead, Russ.
I would add two things there to that new tech. One would be to explore or assess new technologies coming onto the market, such as AI, new software, that sort of thing. And I would also add to collaborate with defense experts of a technical nature in terms of not discussion of legal theories, but staying abreast of what is Celebrate and how can it help your case, how can it hurt your case, like that sort of collaboration with experts. I think you could a tech person can act as that go-between or intermediary to kind of speak a little bit more of a tech language and translate that into more of a legal language for the attorney.
Does that sound right? Collaborate with defense experts on questions of technical natures to stay informed on technology used in the field, example, Celebrite, 3D mapping software, etc., and act as go-between for attorney and expert.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else for any of these 5 things that we've said this position needs to be able to do? Anything else to add to any of those? Okay.
I don't know, I can't really read it very well, but do you have something about helping integrate new technology somehow?
Yeah, number 5.
Point person for technological integration. And man in charge of integrating new technologies. Figure out a better way to word it. There we go. Okay. So I think from that we can craft our position description. And we've got a good jump on our performance standards. It's about 3 o'clock. And I think we set this meeting to go till 3 o'clock. So I want to give you guys the option of going a little bit longer to talk about qualification standards, or we can set another meeting for Monday, go over the polishing that I can do on the part of this that we've got, and start working on qualification standards then. Keep in mind that we're trying to get this all done by Wednesday.
I have to run. I have a meeting at 3, but I will be at whatever time you guys choose on Monday. So have a good day.
Okay.
Yeah. I also have another meeting at 3, but I'm available all day Monday. So whenever you schedule it works for me.
Okay. So let's go ahead, Wes.
Oh, I was just gonna say Monday afternoon might be best because we got a couple new people starting on Monday, and I'm gonna be onboarding them all morning. So
Okay. So let's see. Steve, Russ, Monday afternoon work for you?
Yes, for me.
Let me see.
If we could start,
Yeah.
1:30 or 2, something like that, or even later.
How about 2 o'clock?
I'm off on Monday, but I'm sure Wes can be in
That's
my
right.
stead.
You're giving Wes your proxy. Okay. It's a lot of power, Wes. You up for it?
oh, I've been waiting for this day.
All right.
Hey
Thank
guys,
you, everybody.
can I drop some performance things that I worked up in, where do you want me to drop it? Because I don't think I have access to edit the Google Doc.
Oh, you can email them to me and I will add them to the Google Doc.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Thank you all.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you
guys.
all.
I look forward to
everyone.
Monday.
Good to see y'all. Bye-bye.
Bye.